Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, another day, another Florida State offensive line commitment, and that's where I wanted to start. I mean, Mike Norvell, you could tell, was very intentful in terms of what staff he wanted to come in. I think recruiting, talent evaluation, talent acquisition was at the forefront of his mind. Look, we haven't seen Herb Hand really recruit the high school ranks at Florida State yet. We're getting a little bit of a taste of what he can do in the transfer portal. He's absolutely crushing it. I mean, you look at Florida State, we had massive question marks about what the offensive line would look like heading into 2025. We knew it would have to be transfer portal heavy. They crushed it, in my opinion. You look at Micah Pettis, 2,100 snaps in the SEC, probably going to be your starting right tackle. You look at Gunnar Hansen on the left side, 2,100 snaps in the SEC, bona fide starting left tackle. You want an experienced center that's played very, very good football, go out and land a guy like Luke Petitbon coming in from Wake Forest. Now, as a Wake Forest alum, I've watched this kid play a lot of football over the last couple of years. Dill, he ain't gonna be the first one off the bus. You know, he goes around 6'2.5", 295 pounds. Really, really smart, a big time communicator at the center position, and a really good athlete. And the size doesn't really play that big of a part in his game because, yeah, he's not the most physically imposing, but he's a guy that plays with excellent leverage. He's got really, really good athleticism coming off the line of scrimmage. And to me, this makes total sense. There's a reason he was one of the more coveted centers that we saw in the transfer portal. Florida State goes out and gets him. This offensive line, it's hard to build an offensive line in the portal. Mike Norvell, Gus Malzahn, Herb Hand, they seem to be doing that heading into 2025. Another really good get. Want to dive a little bit more in to Luke Petitbon. Talk about a few targets that have emerged for Florida State kind of coming out of the dead, or coming out of the dead period. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. A quick shout out to the Florida State fans. It's been a busy last couple of weeks, new coaching staff, a lot of new players coming into this program. We've broken down almost every single commitment. Every time we talk this Florida State program, the amount of support y'all continue to show means the absolute world. If you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys. And Dill, without further ado, by proxy of me, you are pretty familiar with Luke Petitbon as well. I'll give you the T-box. What does he bring to Florida State at the center position?
And you kind of said it. I mean, that kind of field general at the offensive line spot. And you said, like, communicator. Like, you can tell he's the one making calls, got his hand up there, pointing out where guys are. But also when he's playing, he seems very aware of what's going on. He does a good job picking up stunts, picking up blitzes. Like, again, some of those things you think Florida State, like, did they block linebackers consistently? Not particularly. Did they do a good job in pass protection, picking up their assignments? Not particularly. Like, you look at Wake Forest, it probably wasn't the most talented offensive line in the world, but they do a decent job of keeping that offense kind of rolling along a little bit. And I look at him, he kind of did feel like the leader of that group. Now, the one question you're going to have about Luke Petitbon is what he can do in terms of physically imposing himself and getting that Florida State offensive line playing more physical. And it's not so much it's just not knowing, because at the end of the day, Wake Forest, they play their slow mesh kind of run scheme. They don't ask their offensive linemen to move guys off the ball. They actually can't move them off the ball because it's all predicated on RPOs. You can't be downfield. So that'll be the one thing I'm kind of looking at when he takes the field for Florida State is that physicality, is that ability to move guys around kind of where you're going to want it if you're
agreed. Especially in a Gus Malzahn offense that wants to run the football. A couple of things I like about it, all stuff you said. These kind of guys are what makes Dave Clawson a successful coach at Wake Forest. Like, the guys that aren't going to get off the bus and wow you, but just have been developed within that Wake Forest program to become really good football players. The Luke Petitbon embodies that. Now, in the run game, I think you're looking more at a really athletic center than an imposer. And so on some of those double teams, what excites me the most is what he can do getting to the second level and picking up guys that like linebackers at the second level. That's probably, to me, where he has the most success. And Dill, I mean, I kind of did some scratch math here. Over 8,000 snaps Florida State has brought in through the transfer portal. I mean, this is going to be a very experienced group. Now, the question is, how well can Gus Malzahn and Herb Hand get this unit to come together and play on the same page. But you got the guys to have a very quality offensive line in 2025. And I think the last thing I'll say about Luke Petitbon is that this is like the ideal center you'd want kind of gluing this offensive line together. That's going to be a lot of new faces, but more importantly, it's going to be a new system and a new scheme. Like you're going to have different pass protection assignments and responsibilities. There's going to be a little bit of difference in terms of how that run game works. It's one of the smartest football players you'll see in college football. This is a guy that I want kind of transitioning into this Gus Malzahn offense. Now, we had the conversation, let's see, was it Sunday night when Deuce Robinson committed to Florida State? And I asked you, Dill, where would you go if you were Florida State in terms of other positions you want to see the Seminoles address? You said off-ball linebacker. I agreed with you. Well, I got one. And it sounds like Florida State got one too. Marquise Watson Trent. Now, I will raise my hand and say I don't watch a ton of Georgia Southern football. I have not seen this kid play a ton yet. I buzzed the PFF numbers. I buzzed some of the stats. You're looking at a linebacker here, 365 tackles in his career, 27 of those for loss, has played over 2,500 snaps. Oh, yeah, and only a 12% missed tackle rate. 3 straight seasons of 100-plus tackles. A guy that has played a ton of football at the off-ball linebacker spot. Is he going to be super attractive to the NFL? No, probably not, because they look for linebackers that are a little bit taller, a little bit longer. But in terms of college football linebacker, to inject into this defense and, for one, provide some much-needed experience, but more importantly, some more consistent play, this to me is what exactly what Florida State's looking for in that off-ball linebacker room.
And again, you talk about filling holes like that Florida State off-ball linebacker room, especially, it just didn't feel like they were great at being where they were supposed to be and playing with instinct. So, like, again, having a guy like, yeah, maybe you have some questions about the athleticism or the upside potential. At least you kind of know what he's going to give you on the field. And that's going to be a very steady player, a guy who, when he's supposed to be in the B gap filling it, is probably going to be in the B gap filling it, but also can get off blocks and make tackles consistently. Like, again, all things that were really problems for Florida State last year. So you being able to address that position, I think, would be huge, especially with guys who are a little more proven. Because at the end of the day, you still had a lot of guys for Florida State last year in that room who talented but very unproven.
Yeah, what's the difference between him and Sean Murphy? Like, what do we talk about all the time with Florida State? What should their mentality be in the transfer portal? Let's worry less about taking these big swings at guys that have not really proven themselves. Let's go just hit our singles. Let's go just bring in some proving good football players. And hell, you never know. Maybe he gives you some of that. I don't think anybody's talking about Braden Fisk being a game wrecker when he came to Florida State, and you got one. I'm not saying Marquise Watson Trent's going to be that guy, but we said Florida State needs to be more diligent about hitting singles in the portal, going out and getting guys that you know can play good football. Like Sean Murphy is a super talented guy, like kind of checks off all the physical traits you want in a backer, but one, couldn't stay on the field because of injuries, and two, wasn't a proven commodity, and we saw that play out for Florida State in 2024. Marquise Watson Trent, that guy. The last one, pass catchers. We talked about Florida State, the accumulation of basically a basketball team out on the outside. I mean, they are just so tall. Now, True Edwards kind of fits that. He's 6'3", but he brings he's a different kind of 6'3" guy. Normally, when you're talking about 6'3", 200-plus guys, you're talking about big bodies on the boundary that work vertically down the field, which Florida State has. One of the things we said is, hey, do you want to get a little bit more of a slot guy, a guy that can separate and operate after the catch? That's True Edwards. I mean, True Edwards, 91% of his snaps at Louisiana Tech in the slot, forced 13 missed tackles, had 451 yards after the catch. At 6'3", this kid's a separator. He's a human joystick after the catch. To me, that's maybe that kind of wide receiver that we're looking to add into this wide receiver room. Mike Norvell extended an offer. I'm excited to see what goes with True Edwards, who is one of those guys that got the extra year from the JUCO ruling in the NCAA. Go capitalize on it. We'll sign out there. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.